something I haven't talked about that would make me feel better going into Penn State.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's that time for another bonus mailbag edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this show your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to my everydayers out there who probably are starting to get sick of me this week. Too bad. The content's going to continue to flow because there's so much to talk about in this game against Penn State. Let's hop right into it. What I mentioned in the open is Evan Stewart. And I feel okay about Oregon's chances to win at Penn State. I feel better than I did before the season. I would feel better if Evan Stewart were there. This Oregon receiving corps has been awesome so far this year. Absolutely awesome. Dakorien Moore is an exciting watch. Malik Benson is clear. They feel 1A, 1B as the wide receiving targets right now. Sadiq is third. I'm here for it. You've had guys like Jeremiah McLaughlin emerge. We'll see if Cooper Perry keeps having a role, if that was just an early season thing. I feel good. Gary Bryant, we'll see if Justice Lowe comes back. I'd feel better if Evan Stewart was here. There's just no other way, I think, to see it. And he's not a guy who I've talked about in a long time because, we all accepted and processed the injury earlier in the offseason, and he could come back this year. I think it'd be awesome. This is just such a big test for so many people. Having a guy that I know there's no projection, there's no I think with Evan Stewart being on the perimeter. I watched him be a difference maker in the game he did play against Ohio State compared to the game he didn't. And when he did play, he was probably Oregon's best offensive player. I mean, he was absolutely incredible. What I like to can you imagine how you'd feel about this Oregon receiving corps going into this game if it was Dakorien Moore and Malik Benson and Evan Stewart to go with Kenyon Sadiq? Yep. I'd feel a little bit better. He's got big game experience. He's proven himself in this sort of setting. Nobody else in Oregon's receiving corps has. You can say Kenyon Sadiq, sure. He wasn't the number one guy. He caught 2 touchdowns. I get that, but he was still the number 2 tight end to Terrence Ferguson. I don't have many qualms about Kenyon Sadiq because the guy is absolutely awesome. But Evan Stewart's just been in this sort of spot before. I was thinking about this because, as I get into the mailbag here, question from Tyler. Let's talk Evan Stewart. A lot of the national media wrote Oregon off before the season started due to the injury of Evan Stewart, combined with the fact that Dante Moore and receiver room were unproven at the time. If Stewart was healthy, where would Oregon be ranked currently? Would your opinion change about the outcome of Penn State? And would Oregon be considered a national title favorite? Also, how do you think Malik Benson has filled Stewart's role so far, being one of the deep threat options for Dante Moore? Give me all your thoughts regarding Evan Stewart and if he would significantly change the outlook of this roster and how it's perceived. I think it was for national folks that, frame the discussion narrative and outcomes for college football a lot when it comes to rankings. I think it mattered. I don't know that it would change where they're currently ranked because the fact of the matter is Oregon has played 4 really weak opponents. Now they're going to play a great one. And they were passed after the Northwestern game. I don't think so much, maybe because nobody watched the game against Northwestern, even though it was one of the first games that kicked off that day because it was an early window. That was more about what other teams did than what they didn't do. Miami beat South Florida, who was a ranked team, and they dominated them. Georgia went on the road and beat a ranked Tennessee team, who I think was good, in a game that was absolutely incredible to watch. So I don't think their ranking would change, but as I mentioned, I would feel slightly better. It wouldn't radically change my outlook necessarily, but situationally is what, a guy like Evan Stewart would give me more confidence in. This is the first time, if Dakorien Moore goes and shows out, if Malik Benson goes and shows out, great. I know they can do it against Oregon State or Oklahoma State. You've got a different test here, and I'd feel better. I will have a score prediction that'll get up later this week. I know what it is. I'm not telling you right now. I'd probably give Oregon a couple more points. Vegas odds makers would tell you a wide receiver's not worth that many points, but I watched Evan Stewart have a sizable impact. So yeah, I would feel Like, my confidence level for Oregon's offense going into this game, I mean, based on what we've seen, so it's at about a 7.5, 8. And the only reason it's not higher is because they just haven't played anybody. I'd say Evan Stewart would notch it up to an 8.5, probably. Another question. Oregon's run defense. The national media and Seiko have been harping on Oregon's run defense, saying that Penn State ran for 300 yards last year and brought back most of their offense. What they fail to mention is Oregon won that football game last year. I think it can get overlooked. I don't know about fail to mention. I'm expecting Penn State to be able to run the ball against Oregon, but will they be able to throw the ball effectively? Aller's had some inconsistency throwing. Oregon's held opposing passers to a 56% completion percentage this year. I think Oregon will roll Flowers down into the box to help the run game. He's been very good at that, by the way, which was the word on him coming out of high school. And let Dylan Thieneman play center field on the back end a lot this game. Make Aller beat us. What say you? I'm 100% with you. 100%. And Penn State upgraded their receiver room. Oregon secondary is not proven, but what they have shown so far looks really good. Brandon Finney's been a star. I think he's going to be a superstar. He's looked like, we'll say stud. He's looked like a stud right now. And he and Iffy on the outside have not always been perfect. I'd still rather, when you consider that Drew Aller threw 2 picks against Oregon secondary last year, and it was the run game that got him up and down the field. I think Aller went for 225. Hold on, let me pull that up real quick. I think Aller had he went for 226, 20 of 39 passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's got better receivers. Oregon in some ways is better, but not as experienced. Nico Reed played really well in that game, but they also had a coverage bust that led to an easy touchdown. Can you avoid that sort of mistake this week? I think that for Oregon secondary in the spot, I would much rather get beat, even though on paper, yeah, Drew Aller and the receivers are better, or Drew Aller's receivers are better, I should say. I'd still feel better about them winning one-on-one shots on the outside than I would just running up and down the field. How often in these big games does the team that runs for more yards wind up winning? It's most of the time. Now, it wasn't in the Big Ten championship game. If you follow that same sort of script, though, Oregon was outgained by over 100 yards on the ground. You don't win those sorts of games very often. Will Stein and Dylan Gabriel were darn near flawless. That's what that game came down to. Is those two guys were exceptional. Do you want to put that much onus on Will Stein against Jim Knowles, former Ohio State defensive coordinator from the Rose Bowl, and Dante Moore making his first serious start as an Oregon quarterback on the road on the other side of the country when the other team's at home off a bye? I'd prefer to not. So, yeah, I'd rather force Penn State to take shots on the outside. Andrew, kind of serious question this time. If you could pick 3 Ducks players off our roster to give to the Beavs in order to make it a competitive game, which 3 would you take? Would you need more than 3? You would need an entire side of the ball. I would take Poncho, probably Dylan Thieneman on the back end, and probably and Dante. You would need a lot more than 3. you would need a lot more than 3. Braxton, hey Spencer, curious what you think of Hughes. Sounded like he was going to be halfback 1 coming into the year, but only sees a couple minutes when the game's out of reach. Do you think he's not up to par with the other guys, or maybe he's hurt? No, I don't think he's hurt. I have another question about this later, so I'll be brief with this. But no, I think when coaches talk, when they answer questions, a lot of time you're going to get coach speak, and you just have to be okay with that. And you have to try, and this part of what my job is, and many of you do this as well, you have to try and filter out what's coach speak and what is a coach legitimately being honest. I think when, I believe it was Will Stein, might have been Lanning, said, we didn't realize how good the true freshmen were going to be. I think they're being legitimate. Go watch what Mekhi Hughes did against Oregon State this past weekend when he actually had opportunities to make plays. In the first few games when he got touches, he just, happened to be in there on plays where he didn't have anywhere to go. But when you gave him a chance, yeah, he was over 5 yards a touch against Oregon State this past week. I think he's good. I just think the other guys are better. De'Aaron Hill looks better. Jordan Davison's a better short yardage back. So, yeah, I don't think that Mekhi Hughes is just straight up bad. I think Oregon's running back depth is just really good. And Noah Whittington being back, yeah, I would. I'll have thoughts on that on tomorrow's show. But yeah, I don't think we'll see a ton of Mekhi Hughes in this game. I think the running back rotation will be mostly the same. Could condense a little. Like, Jay Harris and Mekhi Hughes might not get more than 1 or 2 carries each in this game. They might get 0. It might get condensed down to Noah Whittington and Jaden Lamar with some spots for De'Aaron Hill and then Davison in the short yardage spot. So I have more questions to get to, including Dakorien Moore. So much to talk about. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's start with Dakorien Moore. 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. He looks calm, cool, and collected. Much bigger test this week against Penn State. I'm excited for him. I really am. He can announce himself as a superstar in college football this week if he goes out and wins this game for the Ducks and plays really well. So he delivered for Oregon last week, like DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode brought to you also by our friends at FanDuel. It's Oregon plus 3.5. Let me double check that. That's the last I saw. And I'm not giving you my score prediction yet. You're going to have to wait. You are going to have to wait. It is still Oregon plus 3.5. If you think there's no way James Franklin's going to break through against Dan Lanning and win in this spot, despite the advantages he has on paper, Oregon plus 3.5 seems like a pretty solid investment for you. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. You can get up to $300 in bonus bets. That's pretty neat. This episode also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. You can move through life, or you can find the things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there, choose your people. You can choose to go for it, like really go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Oregon's trying to do more than simply win this week. That's the mindset that Mazda has. Check them out. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, even bonus shows have second segment sips. So let's keep rolling through the mailbag here. Gavin says, hi, Spencer. Hope you're having a great day. Love watching the shows and everydayer. Shout out to my everydayers out there. Been a blast following along, so thank you for all the great content. I hope you're not sick of me yet, Gavin. I've been thinking a lot about the Penn State game, starting to wonder if their bye week might actually be a slight disadvantage rather than a benefit, especially considering where we are in the season. Since it's relatively early, I feel like playing more games could help a team build rhythm and identify areas for improvement. Penn State may be more rested, but with the lighter competition they faced so far and one fewer game under their belt, I wonder if Oregon actually comes in a bit more battle-tested. Plus, having another game to focus on Penn State could help with preparation. Curious to hear your take on this, and as always, go Ducks. Yeah, I get where you're coming from there. I'd say it's a bigger factor if Penn State weren't such an experienced unit. It is strange. It is strange that Penn State's offense has been the group that has struggled the most because they have the same coordinator, better receivers, and mostly the same players. So the defense lost Abdul Carter, probably the best defender in all of college football last year, up there along with Caleb Downs at Ohio State. And Oregon took him out in the Big Ten championship game because Josh Connerly, it turns out, is really, really good at football. Big test for Isaiah World this week, by the way. It's 9 Dennis Sutton, also a very good player. So if Penn State, if I didn't already know, the reason that I talk about Penn State in the sense that I know what they can be and Oregon is not as proven is because I watched Penn State go to the national semifinal last year. And they were one drive away from playing for a national championship. They were one drive away. One. They were tied with Notre Dame. They needed one stop or needed one drive. And yeah, they couldn't get it. If you want to say that's the James Franklin effect coming and rearing its head again, okay, that's fine. But to say that this team wasn't national championship caliber last year, I don't hold that opinion. I don't know how you can get there when they were literally one play away. So I know that the core of this team, with its coordinator, quarterback, and players, especially the running backs, they lost Tyler Warren, the tight end. That's a factor. I know that their potential is immense because you lose Warren, you upgrade your receivers considerably. So I don't think it's a disadvantage when you have that level of familiarity. And Penn State's had an extra week to prepare for Oregon here. They're at home. Oregon has to go all the way across the country. Yeah, I would feel better if Penn State weren't off a bye. I would. I see your point, and I think there is some validity to it. I just think when you have a quarterback, an offensive line, and an offensive coordinator, and two running backs that have been running this system for so many games now, they don't need as many reps to get to their full potential. They just have to be in the right mental state. And I don't think they have been. I don't think Oregon has always been either. I think they went out against Northwestern and they were flat. And they went out against Oregon State, they were flat. Why? They're building up to this game. So, I also say that, and we'll throw out there that if Oregon's defense plays well in this spot, and on today's normal show, I talked about the pressure on Tosh Lupoy to execute in a big game like this. I'm not going to take away from Tosh Lupoy if Penn State, scores 17 points in this one. I'm not going to say, well, the Penn State offense has no. I know what the Penn State offense can be. They haven't done it yet. I know what they can be because they haven't done it yet this year, but I've seen them do it before. This one from his name is Puddles. I think one of the best things that happened to Ohio State was losing to Oregon and later losing to Michigan. It felt like it gave them a chip on their shoulder and fueled the fire. Do you think there's a possible benefit to Oregon losing the game this week versus Penn State? Team looked a little complacent last year going into the Rose Bowl. I don't know. Makes me almost wish we'd lost to Ohio State earlier in the year. Let me know your thoughts. Go Ducks. I listen to Locked On Ducks every day. Thanks for the show. You got a great thing going. Appreciate the nice words. So, I think there are a couple benefits to losing here. It does, put a chip on your shoulder. Think about when Oregon last lost a big regular season game, Washington 2023. What happened after that? They rattled off a bunch of wins, and they were playing like one of the best teams in the country. And then, unfortunately, they couldn't get by the Huskies in the Pac-12 title game. But they started playing some really good ball. Now, Oregon's never won a national championship, so that should be a chip on your shoulder. For guys that were there last year, the way it ended, that should be a chip on your shoulder. This would be another one. I don't think they should need, a starting point for playing with an edge or playing, for something bigger, understanding what your goals are this year. Bryce Betcher is playing for this football team right now because Oregon did not win the national championship last year. Well, he's a leader of your defense and one of your captains on the team. So I think that the other benefit could be that, Oregon avoids the possibility of a first-round bye, and they get to play a home playoff game. That could be beneficial. Get back into the swing of things, not have as long of a layoff, play a home playoff game. There are some benefits there. How badly would Dante Moore need to play in order for us to have concerns about his pass come up? Well, I think he'd have to be under 200 yards passing with more interceptions than touchdowns. That would be concerning. I don't anticipate that. That's where it'd have to go. I mean, if he goes for 230, 2 touchdowns and a pick in this game, and Oregon loses, 30-24 or something like that, I'm not sounding the alarm bell about Dante Moore. Jacob sends this one in, and then my favorite question of the day to wrap this mailbag show. Jacob says, I think one of the best things... Oh, wait, I just read that question. I put that one twice. I think Jacob submitted that one twice. I had these all in a row, and then I stack them on top of each other in the order that they're received. So anyway, now I get to my favorite question. Atticus sends this one in. Mailbox question. Why was Dakorien Moore doing punt returns towards the end of the Oregon State game? Is that not a pointless way to potentially get injured before Penn State? Also, my username is Atticus because my dog's name is Atticus, and I use Twitter like a burner account. And yes, his favorite player is Atticus Sappington from one of your female everydayers. We do exist. I thought, this is not to say that I don't appreciate anybody and everybody that listens to or watches this show. I do see the YouTube demographics, and it's mostly fellas. But you know what? I want to appeal to everybody. I should be able to appeal to anybody and everybody out there, as long as you're an Oregon fan, or if you're not an Oregon fan. So I saw that and thought of, I think it's a scene from Arrested Development when David Cross is standing up on the stage. I forget what he's talking about. And he says, "There are dozens of us. Dozens." I don't know the audio demographic on YouTube. My audience is over 94% male, 95. But hey, like that just gave me such a big chuckle. Well, from one of your female everydayers, we do exist. Like, that's awesome. Okay. And I know that they do. I've met a couple of you out there. So back to your question about Dakorien Moore and returning punts at the end of the game. Gary Bryant did not have a good day returning punts. He was not reading the ball well. And look, I got to credit Oregon State's punter. First time anybody's uttered that phrase all year. You got to credit him for getting balls off his foot that were not particularly easy to catch, but he fumbled the ball around twice, and it didn't exactly instill confidence for a guy who has not been explosive in the return game in his career, but has been solid catching the ball, which especially on punts is my number one thing. Like, if you can pull a Tez Johnson or D'Anthony Thomas and get a big return, that's awesome. But nothing drives me crazier. Okay, I won't say nothing. Few things can drive me crazier than your offense doesn't get to take the field because the return man fumbled the ball. You just, job number one, catch it. So Dakorien's probably back there because he's a more explosive athlete, and I think has more potential in the return game. I hear you, and I think this a lot. I've seen it a lot with Oregon teams over the years that, sometimes I'm watching a game that's out of hand, and I'm going, why is this guy on the field? Dante Moore, and Lanning got asked about this in his post-game press conference. Dante Moore was out there for probably one more drive than he needed to be, maybe even two more drives than he needed to be, and you could make the same argument. I think it comes back to a calculation of, yes, there's a risk of injury in that spot, and that would be a horrible look, and there would be a lot of criticism that results from it. You have to weigh that against, these are young guys that haven't played a lot of football and you want to get them reps. I won't be shocked if Dakorien's returning a punt against Penn State. Maybe they want to go for the more sure-handed and veteran Gary Bryant. But special teams can be a game changer, especially in what's expected to be a close game this week. So maybe they see Dakorien as being better in the return game. He could be a great punt returner. Tez Johnson-esque, I think, if he's good enough catching the ball back there, and we know he's got really good hands. So now catching a punt is different. It's very different. I actually did that. I wasn't catching, I caught a couple punts. I was with the Southern Utah football team at UC Davis last week, and in the walkthrough the day before, I was just hanging with the special teams guys because I know them pretty well, and they were, kicking the ball around, and I was catching the ball because I didn't have anything else to do. I knew what my broadcast setup was going to be, and kind of forgot, when you get a fully inflated and full-size college football and you catch a field goal, dude, it hurts. It hurts when you're not wearing shoulder pads that come down and protect your chest a little bit. You feel like it's going to leave a little welt right there. Yeah. You feel like it's going to leave a mark. Anyway, so for, obviously these guys don't have that problem, but that's a random tidbit that I decided to share. So you all know that now, whether you wanted to or not. But that's the reason. The reason is that he's a young guy, and when you have the opportunity to get them game reps, you want to do as many as you can, and also be cognizant of the fact that you don't want to get them injured because they're important players. But especially going into this game against Penn State, what's the number one thing I've talked about for Oregon in this spot? We don't know. Why? Because they're young. And so the coaching staff looks at a situation like that and says, we have an opportunity to get a young guy experience in game action so that later, if we call upon him in a big spot, we feel better about that because he's had a game rep. You can work on it in practice as much as you want. It's not the same. So that's why. That's emptying the mailbag. I was going to do this on Thursday, and I decided to do it today. So hope you all enjoyed, and keep sending your questions. I might have time to do another one. We'll see. I'm kind of busy this week. I'm playing in a golf tournament tomorrow. So appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.